Good afternoon. This is Michael Mitchell with Madison County Weather Updates. We're recording this Sunday afternoon, and we've got a developing situation that I've kind of forewarned for a few days was going to be possible, and that's with potential for freezing rain tomorrow. So we'll take a look at things and see how they're developing and what the wild cards are with it. The National Weather Service has issued a winter weather advisory, and that does include Madison County. Of course, Madison County is right here where the yellow arrow is. It does include pretty much the vast majority of central Indiana, especially north central Indiana. And this advisory is for the potential for up to 1/10 of an inch of freezing rain. The winter weather advisory goes into effect at 4 p.m. tomorrow and lasts until 10 a.m. Tuesday. Now, how much of that time period will actually have freezing rain in it is up for grabs. I believe Madison County's best chance is going to be tomorrow evening and into the very early hours of Tuesday. Again, the advisory is for total ice accumulations of around 1/10 of an inch. And isolated areas may receive ice accumulations upwards of 2/10 of an inch. And again, that's all going to be in the timing of temperatures and the onset of precipitation. So let's take a look at what some of the data has. Actually, first I want to take a look at something that the National Weather Service tweeted out earlier, and that's showing their greatest threat for ice accumulations. And it's hard to see on this map, but right where the arrow is Madison County. There's Muncie. So we are right on the southern edge of their circled area. Earlier, that area was circled farther to the northwest. They since have moved this down closer. And again, that's because it's looking like temperatures may not rise as quickly as what was once thought. And so that would mean that the onset of precipitation would create an earlier beginning to ice accumulation. So I'm going to do something I don't normally do, but I'm going to go to Weather Underground because Weather Underground shows what would be a best case scenario for us and what the Weather Underground has. And it's really hard to see, but right next to my yellow arrow, it has us reaching freezing at around 3 p.m. tomorrow. And then as you slide across for 7, 8, 9 p.m., still around 32 degrees, 33 degrees at 10 p.m., and Weather Underground has us, the temperatures rising through the entire period and being above freezing through the entire period. So again, 31 degrees at 2 p.m., but by 3 p.m. it has us at freezing and then has us at freezing from there on. If that's the case, we would have very little ice. There would still be ice in the surfaces that would be at the biggest question if air temperatures are above freezing are going to be a lot of these side roads that are still snow covered today, and they've got no sunshine on them, so they're staying well below freezing. And so tomorrow afternoon, even if we warm up above freezing and those roads melt off, they'll still be so cold that if it starts to rain on them, they will refreeze. But that's all best case scenario. Let's take a look at what some of the high res data has otherwise, though. So we're going to go to pivotal weather and take a look at what would be worst case scenario for Madison County. And we're looking at the 18Z HRRR model. And so we'll take a look, and it's got the teens lingering into early tomorrow morning. And then as we get into the afternoon, we're still here. We are at 2 p.m., 3 p.m., 4 p.m. The HRRR still has us hanging out in the 20s, and that would be a very bad thing for us. And then as we get even later and we get into the overnight hours tomorrow, here we are at 1 a.m. Tuesday, and it still has us in the 20s. And this is all very possible with snow on the ground. We're going to need a lot of this snow to melt in order to minimize this. But if we keep some snowpack around, these air temperatures very well may stay this cold this long. And then as we move on, it's not until we're hitting, late in that run at about noon on Tuesday where the ARRR has the air temperatures reaching freezing and then going above. If that's the case, and we have an onset of rainfall uh, early on, then this would be much worse than just a tenth of an inch of ice, which is bad enough on its own. So sticking with the HRRR, again, this is worst case scenario to me. Um, yeah, here we are in the tomorrow morning. HRRR actually has some patchy snow showers and maybe a little bit of mixing going on tomorrow morning into tomorrow afternoon. So any precipitation that would fall as snow, it wouldn't be too big of a deal. But if any of that falls as liquid, then that would be any liquid precipitation is going to be a problem, especially if we stay in the 20s. And then the HRRRs we get into tomorrow evening, then around this is 9 p.m., 10 p.m., it begins to have the snowfall or the freezing rain moving in and overspreading the area pretty well and lasting as a freezing rain event for quite a while, pretty much through most of its run and not really changing over to actual rain until we hit around noon tomorrow. So again, this is ARRR, and this is the worst case scenario on this. And here's a look at what that scenario would then put down. And again, we take a look, and it's got Muncie at 0.33, Indianapolis at 0.26, has much of Madison County, anywhere from about 0.26 up to maybe about 0.4. And again, this is worst case scenario. This would be ice storm criteria. Once you reach a quarter of an inch of freezing rain, that becomes ice storm criteria. And I'm not saying that we're going to have an ice storm. I'm saying this is what the 18Z HRRR is putting down. The 12Z was pretty aggressive as well. And we'll take a look at it a little bit more in the way of other possibilities real quick. And before I go on here to the NAM3K, one more thing about the HRRR scenario that would be significant is if air temperatures stay in the 20s for that long, then ice on power lines and trees become a problem. And some of these other scenarios where we go above freezing, while ice would still be a problem, it would be more of a problem on some of these side roads that are not getting sunshine now, and on surfaces like that get cold easily, like cars and other metal elevated surfaces, fences, things like that. Maybe some low-lying shrubs, but not so much on power lines and trees. So that's something to keep in mind. Again, that's the big distinction in this is if we stay in the 20s tomorrow, power lines and trees will be at play. If we do more like what the NAM3K shows, and we'll go ahead and take a look at it here real quick. And so it's got us in the teens, coming out of the teens by about 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. Temperatures quickly rising to around 30 by about noon. And then it has us hitting the freezing mark by about 2 p.m. and then hanging out around freezing until we get into the maybe 3 a.m. time frame Tuesday morning. Then the HRRR has us moving well above freezing. So in that scenario, it's not as bad. Our ice accumulations would be lower. We would again only be concerned about side roads that are untreated and have not received much sunshine, and of course your vehicles that are more prone to be colder because they're metal surfaces. So you could have like some frozen windshields and frozen car doors and things like that. So that's the best case scenario, is that the temperatures rise more quickly and we're not dealing with a prolonged period in the 20s where we have a chance to build up a lot more in the way of ice. So that's what that scenario would be played out. And I think that's a little more where the National Weather Service is, where we could pick up a tenth of an inch of ice or so. But again, their thinking is that it's only going to affect untreated roads that have been sheltered and have stayed below freezing, and it could be a problem on your vehicles. And taking a look at what the HRRR has for total ice in around here from Indianapolis to Muncie, it's only got a couple of hundreds, which still could be a problem if you're driving. Again, on the side roads, but it keeps the heavier ice farther off to the northwest, really northwest of Lafayette. So those are your two kind of extremes on how this could play out. In the realm of the less realistic, here's the European. Again, the European has wanted not much to do with any kind of wintry precipitation at all this month, and until they're really upon us, and then it starts to see it. So it's been late to the game on everything. But the European, I switched to a more regional view so I can show you kind of what I think is a little more in the way of realistic. But the European gives us pretty much nothing in the way of freezing rain. That would be the definitely preferable. I, like most people, have zero use for ice. Ice causes too many problems and is too dangerous. So I would root for the European, but I don't think it's realistic. The GFS is a little more middle of the road. It has this stretch from Indianapolis to Anderson to Muncie picking up anywhere from about 500ths to maybe a tenth of an inch of ice. It's not as bullish even with the ice up to the northwest. So I think that's a pretty reasonable look at things. Here's the high resolution Canadian. It's a little more in alignment with what the HRRR has. It's more bullish. It's farther southeast. It keeps the colder around longer, and would have us reaching ice storm criteria at somewhere around a quarter of an inch of ice. So there are a lot of different solutions with the data, and we're just gonna have to wait and see how temperatures do tomorrow. So what I would say is, as we get into tomorrow, if we're seeing that we're hitting noon and 1 o'clock and it's still in the 20s, then we probably are going to have an ice storm potential on our hands. If we're hitting noon to 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and we're at or above freezing, then it's going to be a less impactful event. So all we can really do is wait and see. Ice storms don't tend to show themselves until a couple of hours ahead of time. Data will really struggle with it because it's all about when that warm air gets in here, how fast the warm air gets in here relative to the onset of precipitation. And it's going to be a close race, and we're just going to have to wait and see how that all plays out. But I wanted to show you the different scenarios. Again, my gut is that we're going to see the teens last overnight. I think will last into the 20s, probably into early afternoon. I think by the time precipitation starts, we'll be getting around to above freezing. And so my gut is that the biggest thing we're going to have to be worried about are going to be the side roads, and are going to be your vehicles. And there may be some minor icing of trees and power lines, but I don't think it's going to be anything that's going to be a big problem. That's what my gut is. And then I think by the time we're hitting the middle of the night or the very wee hours of Tuesday, maybe 3 to 5 a.m. Tuesday, it's just going to be a strictly rain event, and temperatures would continue to warm. So that's kind of what I think, but I wanted to show you all the different data scenarios. And again, we're under a winter weather advisory. The national weather from 4 p.m. tomorrow through 10 a.m. on Tuesday. National Weather Service is calling for around a tenth of an inch of ice, mostly on untreated roads and on lower level surfaces. And that's what I would plan on. I think that seems like a reasonable call. But again, I just wanted to let you know that if we're seeing the 20s linger into tomorrow afternoon, and especially if they linger into tomorrow evening, then we can have a bigger problem on our hands. So prepare as such. I'll update you as things go. I will cover one other thing before I go on this. Here's a look at the 7-day forecast that I'll be posting here shortly. I'll give this video some time to circulate and be digested. But here's what I'm calling for. I think by the time we're getting into the daytime tomorrow, we're somewhere around 30 degrees, and then temperatures will rise throughout the day and into the overnight. I think by the time we're hitting midnight, we're going to be around 34. Tomorrow's high, I think, is going to occur right before midnight. The low is going to occur actually late morning, early afternoon, and then the temperatures will rise. And I think we'll see temperatures just continue to slowly rise throughout the week with pretty much daily rain chances. And it's not going to be torrential rain, but it's just going to be rain that'll just add up and add up and add up. And we could see an inch or an inch and a half by the time rainfall moves out Saturday. And temperatures will probably peak somewhere in the lower 50s, maybe mid 50s on Thursday. We'll see how that looks as it gets closer. And then we'll come back closer to reality, but still warmer than average by the time we're getting to the end of next weekend. So I don't think we're going to be seeing any, once we get past this ice potential, I don't think we're going to see any wintry precipitation issues and a real return to winter until we get mid to late in the first full week of February. So somewhere around February 7th to 10th, I think we'll be looking for a return to winter and potentially some snow impacts at that point, but that's still a way off. In the meantime, we're going to be mild, but we're going to be dealing with some ice as we go into that mild period tomorrow. So this is Micah Mitchell with Madison County Weather Updates. Have a great day.